I watched the phone screen glow in the darkness of the hospital corridor. My mother's name, Clara Whitman, refusing to stay quiet. My chest felt tight, the air thick between me and what I knew was coming. I realized then that what had been taken from me went beyond money. It was trust. It was love. It was the very fabric of home unraveling in slow motion. But moments later, when the surgeon appeared, his voice steady but low, telling me that my mother was stable, I felt as if I was seeing the world in colors again. The relief was something I savored silently. In that antiseptic hallway, amid hushed footsteps and beeping monitors, I felt the ground shifting beneath me in more ways than one. I'm 68 years old now, and I've spent the better part of my life giving my labor, giving my love, giving my unwavering devotion to family and strangers alike. I was Clara's only child, and after my husband passed, I became her guardian, her champion, and often, her only light. The years of renting a modest cottage in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, saving every penny from my social work pension to cover her medical bills and prescriptions. Those years shaped me. My name is Isabel Monroe. For 30 years, I worked as a school counselor in LA's public school system. 30 years of listening to teenagers cry, helping broken families find their footing, being the voice of reason in rooms that smelled of chalk and cafeteria food. 30 years of putting others first, until I found myself in clinic offices, racked with unexplained panic, unable to even get my own breathing under control. I remember the day I was diagnosed, panic disorder. The doctor said, prescribing me Klonopin like it was a daily vitamin. Little blue pills to steady my nerves. I took them quietly in the bathroom, focusing on the bitter taste as I pressed the tablet under my tongue. It was another sacrifice. Because doing my job meant being calm for others, shuffling schedules, supervising tearful kids in conflict, keeping the school open when the funding ran dry. Money was always tight. Clara's medications, my rent, the utility bills, the faint pillows I bought for her back. It all came from the small salary that passed through my hands as the only teacher in the family. Evenings and weekends were spent doing extra paperwork, sending letters for parents who needed financial aid, stretching every paycheck as though it were made of fragile silk. The miracle came when my daughter, Emma, graduated from university. Holding that diploma, watching her in her cap and gown, it felt like the culmination of every sleepless night and quiet sacrifice. She decided to return home and work for a tech startup in downtown LA. She looked happy, full of possibility. That's when she introduced me to her new boyfriend, Marcus, a charming, confident man who worked in marketing. He had the designer watch, the confident grin, the way he talked about growth and dreams. I wrinkled my nose at first. The age difference, his fast lifestyle, the sleek apartment Emma bragged about, but he seemed kind, attentive to both of us. Their simple wedding followed, and I used every dollar I'd set aside for Clara's missed therapy sessions on the reception. Marcus gave me a tight hug. "Welcome to the family, Mom," he said with such sincerity that my heart cracked with relief. For a moment, I believed in the fullness of our blended family. I retired in 2022, just as Clara's health faltered. I moved her closer to me, upgraded to a cozier bungalow where she could walk in the garden, and I could manage her meds. Emma and Marcus visited often. The house smelled of coffee, lavender, and low dog whines from our old mutt, Charlie. I began feeling the weight of my lungs lift, the quiet joy of half-days at home, so quiet it felt sacred. But then 2024 arrived, and the visits from Marcus began with platitudes. "I was passing by and thought you might need this." Medicine, groceries, casual small talk that turned into longer visits, first polite, then lingering. I felt flattered. I'd have been proud of my daughter if she'd found someone willing to take care of her mother. Yet something felt off. After Marcus left, the fruit bowl seemed lighter, some oranges missing. He'd always ask for water, linger in front of the fridge. I chalked it up to memory lapses at first. I was old, tired, maybe the Klonopin made me foggy. Then came the money. I noticed withdrawals from my checking account. Hundreds missing here and there. Cash I was sure I'd tucked into my dresser drawer. I blamed myself. Forgetful. Old. I tucked my purse in my bedroom, locked the doors. Emma begged me not to worry, but I couldn't shake the unease. The tipping point came in August last year, when I received a credit card statement full of charges at a high-end sportswear store and a luxury spa. 2 places I'd never been. I called the bank in disbelief. Yes, ma'am, the charges were confirmed. I canceled the card immediately. They reassured me it was likely someone exploiting my card. I didn't tell Emma. 2 months later, another round of unauthorized charges, this time at an upscale boutique downtown. I canceled again. Then I began logging them. Spreadsheet after spreadsheet, tracking dates, amounts, store names. I noticed something. Each charge happened on days I'd babysit at Marcus's local group fitness studio. 2 hours there, a quick errand, a latte. But it wasn't until November, when I found dark motel receipts in an envelope Marcus had asked me to store, that my heart turned cold. I opened them, fumbling with distant disbelief. Lounges, rooms, spas, all with my residence address. I felt as though ice water was being poured into my chest. I kept collecting scraps of proof, suspicious ATM withdrawals, receipts in my name, messages from women on Marcus's business social media praising him for his charm. At the same time, Emma seemed so busy she didn't notice. And I, fearful of splitting their marriage, remained silent. Until the day I collapsed in our local cafe, bent over the table, vision blurred, the vents spinning a carousel above me. My legs gave out, and the barista called an ambulance. At Cedars-Sinai, my oxygen levels were low, my blood pressure spiked. The doctor nodded, looking at my charts. Panic attack, hyperventilation, he said gently. We need to understand what's causing this. I lied, saying stress, nothing more. But by then I had made up my mind. I would no longer be the soft old woman, the invisible caretaker. I would gather evidence. I would reclaim my dignity. A close friend of mine, Rosa, who used to work in law enforcement, listened when I finally told her. She didn't tremble or tell me I was crazy. Instead, she told me what I needed to do. Consult an attorney about elder financial abuse, request formal records from the bank, file a discreet police report. That's what I needed. Validation, tools, support. And that's why I called the attorney in Silver Lake, and why I hired a data recovery specialist through discreet channels, willing to invest in gathering the messages I suspected were there. I thought I was going to expose just theft, but I had no idea what else I would uncover. It was a Tuesday when the folder arrived. The data technician I'd hired, through a referral Rosa insisted was trustworthy, had sent me a compressed file titled Monroe Inquiry _0824. The password he'd set was Healing 68. I typed it slowly, hands trembling more from anticipation than fear. When the files unlocked, a single folder opened. Inside, screenshots. Hundreds of them. I stared at the screen in disbelief. WhatsApp messages between Marcus and several women. Some were clients from the studio. Others used usernames or initials. One was saved as LV_massage. Another as Tiff_beacon. The tone of the conversations was unmistakable. Flirtation, explicit exchanges, arrangements to meet at motels I now recognized from the bank statements. Each message like a thread unraveling the man I thought I knew. And worse, some mention me. Casually. Cruelly. The old woman has no clue. She thinks I come by to help with meds. I'm just there to check on her wallet. Another. My mother-in-law pays for all of this. Literally. Bought those supplements on her card. She thought they were for Emma's joint pain. And another, uglier still. Can't wait till she croaks. Emma will inherit everything. And I'll finally sell that rickety house. My throat burned. My stomach tightened. It wasn't just financial theft. It wasn't even just infidelity. It was contempt. Total disregard for who I was. He hadn't just stolen from me. He had dehumanized me. I spent the night cataloging. Red for money. Yellow for infidelity. Green for insults. I labeled every message, every screenshot. Each click of my trackpad was like an incision across a wound I hadn't yet treated. That same week, I returned to Rosa with a manila envelope full of printed documentation. She flipped through the papers with silent fury. Her hands were calm, but I could see her jaw tighten. "We need to bring in the lawyer now," she said simply. The lawyer, Miss Adrienne Caldwell, had soft eyes and a hard voice. She didn't flinch once as I laid out what Marcus had done. "This is elder financial abuse," she said, circling one of the bank statements. "And potentially wire fraud if he used your cards across state lines. But it's also emotional abuse. Theft of agency." I asked her if I had enough for a case. Her reply was crisp. "You have more than enough. But the question is, what do you want to do with it?" I stared at the stack of evidence. I could press charges. I could go public. But the weight of it wasn't about the courtroom. It was about Emma. About how to tell her. About when. Adrienne gave me time. But she also helped me create a formal record. Letters to the bank, filed reports, digital copies stored in the cloud, and a physical safe. Rosa bought me the safe. It sat behind old board games in the linen closet. Password. First choice. The words my mother used to whisper to me when I was little. Be your own first choice. In the meantime, Marcus kept visiting. He'd bring over smoothies. "Emma said you've been low on energy. This one's for inflammation." He'd talk about a new business proposal he was excited about. "I might open my own studio in Burbank," he'd say casually. "But we'll need some upfront funding." I would nod slowly, smiling. "What do you think?" he asked, eyes full of rehearsed sincerity. I looked at him for a moment. "I think your birthday is coming up soon. You turning 36. He chuckled. "Yep. October 11th. But Emma's planning something small. Nothing big." "Good," I said softly. Sometimes small things reveal the biggest truths. That evening, I sat down and drafted a letter to Emma. I didn't send it, but writing it helped me clarify my heart. I wanted her to see, not just the betrayal, but the rot beneath Marcus's charm. And I wanted her to see who I had become too, not a burden, but a woman capable of starting over. In the days that followed, I gathered more evidence. Phone screenshots, transaction logs, even the receipt for a hotel room Marcus had booked using my name. He'd even listed me as emergency contact. I began to plan. If I was going to confront him, it would not be in whispers. Not in secrecy. I would not be gaslit. I would not be dismissed. So I called Adrienne. "I don't want to press charges." "Not yet," I said. "I want something else first. I want the truth to be seen." She didn't question me. She simply said, "Then let's make sure you're protected." We drafted a cease and desist letter in advance. Had it notarized. Prepared to serve it the day after the reveal. In parallel, I worked with a local AV company Rosa found. A woman-owned business that specialized in discreet installations for events. I asked for a secure system, something triggered remotely. "Are you planning to humiliate someone?" the owner asked, half joking. "No," I replied. "I'm planning to stop hiding." October approached fast. Emma grew more distracted. Longer hours at work, shorter texts, attention I couldn't quite place. Marcus grew more casual, confident, like a man who'd been getting away with something for too long. I invited Emma for tea on October 8th. I made chamomile with honey and pulled out her favorite lemon shortbread cookies. She smiled but looked tired. I wanted so badly to tell her right then. To say, "He's lying to you. He's lying to both of us." But I looked at her face, the one I'd once held as a baby, and my voice faltered. Instead I asked, "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" She nodded too quickly. "Just work. And Marcus is stressed. He's trying to pitch his new brand. It's a lot." My heart ached, but I smiled gently. "You're doing great," I said. "You know, your grandma would have been proud." When she left, I sat in silence for a long time, the clock ticking loud against the hush of the house. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't grieving either. I was just resolute. October 11th arrived like a whisper. The evening sun dipped behind the trees lining our street. I looked at the table set for the small dinner Emma had planned. A few family friends, some of Marcus's colleagues, no more than 20 people. I wore a dress I hadn't worn in years, deep plum, elegant. My hair pinned neatly. In my purse, a remote. When we sat down to eat, Emma tapped her glass gently. "Before dessert, she said, smiling. I want to toast the man I love. Marcus smiled wide, raising his glass. And then before she could speak, before I could say a word, I clicked the remote. Behind them, the TV screen lit up. Not photos, not memories, just words. My mother-in-law is a walking ATM. The room froze. Then came the photos, the receipts, the texts, and slowly the truth. The screen behind Marcus kept changing, each slide more damning than the last. The first few guests sat in stunned silence, unsure if this was some twisted joke. A few people chuckled awkwardly. But when the texts appeared, when they began to see the dates, the names, the screenshots, no one was laughing anymore. Emma's hand, still holding her champagne flute, began to tremble. Her eyes were locked on the television, blinking slowly, almost rhythmically, as if she were trying to wake up from a vivid nightmare. Marcus turned toward me, eyes wide, jaw clenched. What the hell is this? He hissed under his breath. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The screen was speaking for me. October 5th. Message to Tiff_Beacon. Old lady just gave me her pin again. Gonna grab a little extra this time. She won't notice. She thinks I'm helping with Emma's supplements. October 7th. Message to LV_massage. Use the card again. She leaves her purse in the kitchen like a damn invitation. October 8th. To an unknown number. Emma's sweet, but predictable. Once I get the new place, I'll probably drop the act. She's too basic to see it coming. You could feel the temperature drop in the room. Emma's face had gone completely pale. Her hand dropped the glass, and it shattered softly against the hardwood floor. Marcus lunged toward the remote in my lap, but I stood quickly, eyes locked with his. Sit, I said, not loudly but firmly. His hand paused mid-reach, and I saw for the first time a flicker of real fear in his eyes. Not just fear of being caught, but of losing control. The next slide was an Excel sheet. Expenses, withdrawals, card charges, all highlighted, all traced back to my accounts. Every dollar accounted for, every lie documented. The room was still except for the sound of Marcus's breath, shallow, erratic. I don't understand, Emma finally said, her voice cracking. She turned to Marcus, as if still hoping for some twisted explanation that would make it all make sense. Tell me this isn't real, she pleaded. Marcus looked around. His face tightened into the mask I knew well. The charm, the bravado, but this time it faltered. Cracked. She's making this up, he spat. She's always been paranoid. Taking pills for years. You know this, Em. She's not stable. That was the final line he would cross. Don't, Emma said sharply. Her voice now clear, steely. Don't you dare talk about her like that. Marcus stepped back, clearly taken aback by the shift in her tone. The strength in it. The sudden break in his hold over her. She protected me my whole life, Emma continued, turning toward me. She's been the only constant I've ever had. And if she went this far, if she made all of this visible, it's because you gave her no choice. For a long second, nobody moved. Then Emma walked up to me, gently took the remote from my hand, and clicked off the screen. Turning back to the guests, she said simply, "Thank you for coming. Please leave." One by one they stood. No questions. No hesitation. Just the soft shuffle of shoes and the quiet closing of the front door. When only the three of us remained, Marcus, Emma, and me, Emma walked into the kitchen, retrieved a small envelope from the drawer, and returned. "Here's your key," she said, placing it in Marcus's hand. "Take whatever's yours. I expect you out tonight." Emma. No. There's no defense for this. His mouth opened, then closed. And for the first time, Marcus looked small. Not slick. Not smug. Just exposed. He turned toward me. "You've ruined everything," he said, seething. I met his gaze calmly. "No. I revealed everything. You ruined it yourself." He left without another word. The house was silent. Emma sank onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook, but no sound came. I walked to her slowly, sat beside her, and waited. Minutes passed. Then finally she whispered, "How long did you know?" 3 weeks, I said gently. I didn't want to believe it either. I feel so stupid." "No," I said softly. "You trusted. That's not stupidity. That's hope." She turned toward me, tears tracing lines down her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I swallowed hard. "Because I thought it would destroy you. I didn't realize you were already being destroyed, just slowly." We sat like that for a long time, the quiet between us heavier than any words could be. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I walked out to the backyard, the cool Los Angeles air brushing my skin. I looked up at the stars, trying to remember the last time I'd felt this kind of clarity. Maybe never. It wasn't peace, not yet. But it was truth. And that was something. The next morning, we met Adrian together. Emma asked questions I'd already asked. Was it really elder abuse? Could she be held responsible for the debts Marcus incurred in her name? Adrian answered everything patiently, clearly. Yes, it was elder abuse. No, she wouldn't be held responsible. And yes, we could pursue criminal charges. But when Adrian asked what I wanted next, I looked at Emma, and then said, "Nothing more. I just wanted the truth known." Adrian nodded. "That's your right." Emma stayed with me for a few weeks after that. She filed for divorce, froze joint accounts, and changed the locks. Some nights we stayed up late watching old movies. Other nights we cried. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes in laughter that caught us off guard. We became something new. Not just mother and daughter, but survivors. In December, Emma packed her things into a small U-Haul and drove north to her new apartment in San Francisco. A new job. A clean break. As for me, I took a bold step of my own. I used the last of my savings to buy a small studio apartment in a complex overlooking Echo Park Lake. Sunlight poured in through the windows. The neighborhood felt alive. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was starting over, not because I had to, but because I chose to. There were still moments of grief. Still shadows. But there was light now too. A new chapter, written in my own hand. It's quiet in this apartment. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache anymore. Just a steady, calm hum behind the ticking of the wall clock and the soft creak of the floorboards when I walk from the kitchen to the window. I water the plants every morning. The orchid by the sink has bloomed again. The succulents on the windowsill lean toward the sun. And I too, I think, have started to lean back toward the light. 3 months have passed since that night. 3 months since the screen in my living room illuminated more than just receipts and messages. It illuminated a truth I had swallowed for too long. A truth I had dressed in silence and served with coffee. A truth I had feared would break my daughter's heart, but ultimately set her free. Emma still calls every Sunday morning. Her voice is lighter now. There's a new timbre to it, somewhere between exhaustion and hope. She's seeing a therapist. She's enrolled in an online class on forensic accounting. "I want to learn how to spot red flags," she told me last week, her tone both bitter and amused. I told her that wisdom doesn't always come in books. Sometimes it comes from being burned, and sometimes from learning how to warm your own hands again. As for Marcus, I hear whispers now and then. A former colleague of his from the studio texted Emma anonymously, saying he'd packed up and left Los Angeles, unable to find work. The scandal, once private, had found its way online. Screenshots of the party had circulated. Word travels fast when truth echoes louder than any performance ever could. I do not rejoice in his downfall, but I also do not grieve it. Because consequences are not revenge. They are just overdue truths arriving at last. A few weeks ago, I opened a letter from the bank confirming that nearly all the fraudulent charges had been removed from my record. Adrian had written a concise, powerful affidavit on my behalf. The account was officially closed. A new card issued, this time with every layer of protection possible. I keep it in a little red pouch in my bedside drawer. Symbolic, maybe, but meaningful. There's a photo of Clara next to it. My mother. Her soft smile still reminds me of what survival looks like. She survived the war. She survived 2 strokes. She survived loneliness. And I, her daughter, have survived something else. I've survived being erased. I've survived being seen as just a vessel. Of money, of service, of silence. And I am no longer either of those things. The studio here in Echo Park is small, but it's mine. The furniture is modest. The fridge is no longer filled with unfamiliar brands or mystery supplements. Just almond milk, bread I actually eat, and jam I splurge on once a week. I even bought a new couch. A pale green velvet one with firm cushions and enough room to stretch my legs while reading. I sit there at sunset and feel like I belong in my own life again. I've also started writing. Not for anyone. Not yet. But for myself. Little essays. Memory fragments. Moments I once passed over in silence. There's something healing in putting them down. Not to dwell, but to finally acknowledge them. Sometimes we have to give pain a name before we can let it go. Emma visited last weekend. We drank tea by the lake and watched the ducks drift lazily across the water. She laughed when I told her I'd joined a community book club. Romance novels, Mom? She teased. I've earned a little softness, I replied. And I meant it. Because for decades, I believed that resilience meant tightening your grip, suppressing every cry. But I've learned something new. Sometimes resilience looks like letting go. Like smiling after grief. Like starting over with less, but feeling like it's more. One afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom. Not to adjust my hair or my clothes. Just to look. To really see the woman staring back. 68. Lines on my face. Scars I no longer hide. And in my eyes, a sharpness I once dulled to be more likable, more tolerable, more acceptable. No more of that. Now I speak plainly. I protect my peace like it's sacred ground. I no longer explain my boundaries. I simply set them. Some friends fell away after the party. People who felt I had gone too far, or made a scene. I don't blame them. Not everyone is ready for the truth, especially when it's spoken by someone they were used to overlooking. But others reached out quietly. A neighbor down the hall, whose sister is going through something similar. A former student of mine from my counseling days, now a mother herself, who wrote me a letter. Thank you for showing us we're never too old to stop being polite and start being powerful. I cried when I read that. Not because I felt heroic, but because I finally felt seen. And maybe that's the point of telling stories like mine. Not to seek pity, not even justice, but to remind the silent ones that they are not alone. That even if you've been invisible for decades, you are still allowed to step into the light. That your story, messy, painful, and real, still matters. And that, yes, even at 68, you can choose yourself. You can say no. You can start over. Because life doesn't ask permission. It just keeps moving. And all we can do is decide whether we'll keep moving with it, or let it leave us behind. So now, every morning, I open the windows. I let in the air. I drink my coffee slowly. I watch the sun cast gold on the hardwood floor. And I whisper to myself, you are not broken. You were just waiting for your own permission. This was my story. Maybe it's yours too. And if it is, I hope you remember this. You're not too old. It's not too late. And you are not the supporting character in someone else's life. You are the protagonist of your own. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more real stories of resilience, truth, and renewal, because sometimes all it takes is one voice to remind us we're not alone. Life doesn't end at betrayal. It begins with choosing yourself again.